My name's Doug Pergram. I am a sergeant with the Springfield Police Division. I have just shy of 30 years on the job. I started in February of 1996, and I served 15 years as a uniformed patrol officer, 5.5 years as a patrol sergeant, and in October of 2016, I was selected to head up the property room and major crime scene unit. The incident I'm going to talk about today happened when I had 4.5 years on the job. I had made a traffic stop on a car for no license plates. I had been on scene with him for approximately 27 minutes when everything started. I gave him 2 traffic citations, had sent him walking from the scene, and I was going to search his car and then have it towed. So he actually walked off of the parking lot we were on to the sidewalk, and then he came back and asked if he could get some items out of the car. I allowed him to do so. He opened up the driver's door, leaned into the car with one knee on the driver's seat and had a bag on the driver's seat as well, and he was taking items out of the center console and putting those items into that bag. I had went over to the passenger side of the car and was looking at him through the front windshield so I could see his hands and what he was doing, and I just had a terrible feeling about the stop. At that point, he started to back out of the car, and I started to take a step or two towards the back of the car, which positioned my right shoulder to the passenger side of the car as I walked to the back to meet him. At that point, I saw some quick movement out of the right corner of my eye, and what that was the individual coming up over top of the car with a revolver in his hand, and he immediately fired, and the bullet struck me in my right front shoulder, went in my shoulder, out of my shoulder, underneath my vest, went into the right side of my neck, which struck my carotid artery, shredded a bunch of nerves in the front of my neck, and the bullet lodged on the left side of my neck. From there, we ran to the back of the car where we physically fought each other, basically over control of the gun and so forth. Unfortunately, with the strike to my carotid artery, I was really losing a lot of blood at that time. And then after a few seconds of that, he shoved me, and as I fell backwards, I was able to draw my gun, get my first shot off at him, and as I fell, he fired a second time, and the bullet went through my holster and into my stomach underneath my vest. While I was down on the ground, he fired 2 more shots at my head that hit right above my head into a privacy fence, which I was kind of backed up against. At that point, I was able to get 1 more shot off at him, which missed, and then he ran over towards my patrol car. I swung my gun around in that direction, general direction, and fired again. And obviously that one didn't hit him either. So I was able to get up and get some cover behind another car at this point, and he fired 2 more shots, which hit directly above my head while I was pinned down behind the car. While I was back there, I was on my portable radio trying to call for help, but my radio didn't work. He took off running from the scene. He had expended all 6 shots out of his revolver. And I made my way back to my patrol car, and fortunately, since it was July, I had left the passenger window down. I was able to reach into the car, get the car radio, and start calling for help on that radio. Unfortunately, we had some portable radios stolen about 2 weeks before that, and some unknown people in town had been getting on those radios and saying like officer down, and we had been dealing with that for a couple weeks. So when I was actually calling for help, nobody believed me. I fully expected this man to come up and finish me off. I had no way to protect myself. I was completely defenseless at that point. And then somewhere around there, somebody came walking out of the bar on the lot that we were at, and I turned around and pointed my pistol at that man. He raised his hands, said it wasn't him, went back into the bar, obviously told the bartender because she called 911 and said there was a cop laying on the ground in the back lot that had been shot. The man that shot me, he was located about 15 minutes after the shooting. He had broken into an apartment about a block and a half down the street. He was taken into custody without incident. Spent 2 weeks in the hospital, was released, and due to my injuries, I could not speak. My vocal cords had been damaged and so forth. So while I was in the hospital, I was very concerned that if I couldn't talk, I could never go back to work. My chief doctor at the time asked me if I wanted to see a psychologist or something, and I Wasn't quite sure, but I said yes. So over the course of the next 6 months, I saw a licensed social worker. But I think the incident I had been involved in was probably past his level of treatment. Even though it was a significant injury, I was told I had 6 months to come back to work or I was out of a job. But again, this was in 2000. Things are very different now than what they were then. From there, I went back to my normal shift on 4 to midnights or evening shift. Things went okay. The counselor I'd seen, I stopped seeing him in probably January or February of 2001. I could tell things just weren't the same. So come the summer of 2001, I could feel myself starting to decline a little bit. I was getting scared again. I made a traffic stop on a guy, wound up in a severe fight in the middle of the street. Fortunately, I had another officer with me when that happened. I wound up on another call in which a guy went for a gun in a bedroom. But I found myself on these high-stress calls like that, and I was starting to experience a lot more of them. I would find myself going into an alley and just crying for a while. That was a pretty difficult time. And so I called my union rep at the time and asked him, I said, hey, I don't feel right. Things aren't going so well. And, is there any help I can get or anything? And they told me basically just to suck it up. That's just the way it was. Well, I think word was starting to get around headquarters that I wasn't doing very good. I had a shift lieutenant come up to me, provide me the name and phone number of a police psychologist in Columbus. I made an appointment, went and saw him. I think I managed 3 appointments, and it was a complete disaster. And I stopped going. My home life started to suffer. My use of force went up and so forth, and I really started to struggle with, what had happened to me. And to be honest with you, I was done. I was just done. And I didn't know where to turn to. The next few months into the wintertime, things really started to fall apart for me. And I had a use of force incident in December of that year, and they pulled me off the street. And that night when they ordered me to headquarters, they sent me into an office with a shift rep and the shift lieutenant, and the lieutenant proceeded to tell me basically what he thought of me and what the agency thought of me, and that was it. I was done at that point. The next day, I got up, and I wasn't going to go into work that day, and the uniform patrol captain showed up at my house. He and I exchanged a bunch of words, but I did not go into work that night because I couldn't hold it together to go in. Had one person call and check on me, and that was Sandy. And I've never forgotten that phone call. So over the course of the next several days and weeks, life was just terrible. I wanted nothing more than just to kill myself, but I knew I had to keep going. But I didn't know where to turn to. Unlike today where you can get on the internet and find resources and talk to people, and we have CISM teams and stuff like that, that wasn't available back in 2000, 2001. So I had been in contact with another officer from an agency in New York, had told me about a residential treatment place called the On-Site Academy for cops, firefighters, and EMTs, that help people who were struggling, with issues such as I was at this time. So I got their phone number and I gave them a call, and they told me, they said, we've got a class coming up in 3 to 4 weeks, and made me promise them I wouldn't make any life-altering decisions until I got there a few weeks later. Unfortunately, the agency and the city at that time were not very accommodating to help me in any way get there. I asked to use sick time. I was denied that, so I had to use my own vacation time to go there. The treatment itself was quite expensive, and I was on the hook for that. But anyway, it was a few weeks later I flew up to Massachusetts, and my friend who had been the police officer in New York picked me up from the airport, took me to the On-Site Academy, dropped me off on a Sunday evening. I went through 5 days of intense psychological treatment, but I feel that because I went to the On-Site Academy, that changed everything for me. based on my injuries and so forth and the trauma that I'd suffered, I had a lot of gaps in my memory about what happened that night. And I always blamed myself for what happened. And through some of the treatment processes that they did, like I said, intense counseling, procedure called EMDR, they were able to recover these memories from me, and I was able to put together what exactly happened that night. And it took the majority of the gaps out of my mind as to what happened, and I was able to accept that quite a lot more. I was on restricted duty for several months. And then at the end of that, I was ordered to go see a psychologist in town of the city's choice. So I went to see him, and he came up with a treatment plan. I think it lasted 3 or 4 months. So I made it through that. And on my last appointment, he asked me, he said, at the conclusion of this appointment, you have fulfilled your treatment plan that I've prescribed, and also I won't have to report to the city anymore. But if you want to continue to see me, I'll leave that up to you. So absolutely, I continued to see him. Probably saw him for the next 1.5 years, 2 years, and it's my opinion, had I ran across this doctor earlier, maybe been exposed to him, right when I left the hospital, I think things would have been different, because even though he's a psychologist and all we did was talk and so forth, he had me really look into myself and figure things out and figure out what direction I wanted to go, if I was going to stay in police work, and help out with some of the relationships which had been damaged from the prior 1.5 years, 2 years at that point. I spent the next year or two on evening shift, continually just working on myself to make myself get better, because I decided I was going to stay in police work, but I knew I had to get myself better at that point. Some relationships changed and so forth. I ended up getting a divorce, which probably started as a result of my shooting, and a few other things happened to affect that as well. So the struggle itself over the years, I can't lie, it's been difficult. I mean, there's still times now that I struggle with it. But I would say, there's no doubt that the psychologist that I saw long after the shooting, and definitely my visit to the On-Site Academy, they changed the trajectory that my life was headed in at that point. Somewhere around 2010, I felt that my mind had probably actually recovered at that point. It was a lot of... I had recovered from the self-doubt and, the constant, it was my fault all this happened and so forth. And I actually felt my body start to change at that point. And so I made an effort to get promoted on the next list, and I actually put forth a good effort to it. And then in July of 2011, I was #1 on the sergeant's list. I had 15 years on the job at that point. Things are a lot different now than what they were then. We have stuff up all over headquarters. If you need help, here's a phone number for you. We have peer counselors readily available for everybody. We've got people outside the agency that are available for everybody. And of course, I don't know if anybody's taking advantage of any of those resources or not, but hopefully that they are, because knowing what I went through, where you couldn't find anybody, you didn't know where to turn to, at least it's in your face all the time now, and there's no reason anybody can't get the help that they need.